If your staff has a high level of likability, that is going to impact how patients feel about their experience within the practice. If you have a high level of likability, that's going to affect patients in how they feel about their treatments. It's actually going to affect how they feel about the outcome. It'll affect placebo. And that's how important it is. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that everything we experience is the perfect outcome of our current system. And there's power in that. I want you to own it. Imagine any pain you're feeling in the business right now is a result of the systems you have in place. Now, the reason I love that is because that means we're in control, and we just need to spend a little time, take a step back, identify where the constraints are, and then apply solutions that help us achieve a different result as we go forward. Now, there's so many things that impact our systems. Most of them are related to humans because we all have humans in our businesses. And there's some interesting thing about communication that affects likability. Likability matters to you as a physician for a couple reasons. If your staff has a high level of likability, that is going to impact how patients feel about their experience within the practice. If you have a high level of likability, that's going to affect patients in how they feel about their treatments. It's actually going to affect how they feel about the outcome. It'll affect placebo. And that's how important it is. But what can we actually do about it? Well, there's a gentleman, Albert Mehrabian. He is the professor emeritus of psychology at UCLA, and he came up with the Mehrabian rule. And this rule is also known as the 7-38-55 rule. Now, it was a quote-unquote study. I wouldn't say it was like a medical study. This information was put together in the 60s based on some interviews, and it actually has been, I think, misused over the years to kind of help other people sell products. But basically the idea is in communication between two humans or more, that 55% of the effectiveness of that communication is based on visual, 38% is based on sound, auditory, and 7% is based on words. Now, that might shock you to think that us communicating with each other so little is based on the actual words we use. But let me reframe what the rule is really looking at. It's not effectiveness, it's likability. And what we know a lot about ancient humans now and the neuroscience of the brain, this makes a lot of sense. If you imagine the language, the idea of language, has been around a lot less time than humans overall. Just think about that. So as a percentage of our existence, language does not represent a huge percent. So actual words. So if you think about the brain and what it is designed to do, keep us alive. So how can it do that when it comes in contact with someone it can't speak with? You know, another human that doesn't have language is the same as walking up on any other animal. And you not knowing, are you in danger? And so what we developed over the years from an evolution standpoint is the ability to basically gut check, use bias to understand what is the likability or what is the trustability of this other person that I'm across from. And the first thing is visual. Why? Because we have that at distance. Our visual acuity is pretty amazing, and we look for signs that give us an idea that we are either under threat or that we're not under threat. For instance, it can be measured at the cellular level, but if someone meets somebody and you can't see that person's hands, it's a different interaction than if you can see their hands. And it's because hands were known to be carrying potential weapons. So if we show people our hands, then it increases the potential for likability and trust. So imagine you walk into a patient's room and your hands are behind your back And let's say you're looking at a computer dealing with the EMR. That compared to another physician who walks in with their hands open, smiling at the patient, kind of lifted eyebrow look, and focusing on the patient. If everything else is exactly the same, that second physician is going to have a higher likability with the patient and gain more trust. Imagine a patient walking into your office, and let's say your front desk staff is sitting behind a counter, and you can't see their hands, and they're focused on deep work. Maybe they're dealing with insurance, something, and they kind of have this scowl on their face when someone walks up and they look up and they have a scowl. So I can't see their hands and they have a scowl. So imagine it is built into our brain. Someone is not consciously going, hey, wait a second, I can't see the receptionist's hands. I think I'm in danger. That's not happening, right? But it is built in for us to be aware of these things and to make immediate judgments. Now, that's the visual aspect. It's 55% of the likability. The next part is audible, like what we hear, and specifically tonality. So I can convey some emotion pretty easily with my voice. And so if you imagine before actual spoken language, you might be able to hear the sounds of another human and have a pretty good understanding if they were doing some kind of war yell or about to attack compared to another feeling, right? So imagine that same scenario. As a physician, you're talking with a patient and you get into a very monotone, okay, here's the scenario, you're dealing with this, and what we're going to do is we're going to do this, 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 this. And now that patient takes that information and it is not clicking the high trust, high likability. And it may sound strange, but these are things that are just happening kind of in the back end of someone's mind and influencing how they take the information you're trying to convey. And if you're trying to convey something very important to someone, then I think it's on us to be aware how much we're opening that channel of communication. Are we making it harder for someone to accept what we're trying to get to them, or are we making it easier? So if you call somebody, and this is, we work with practices on how the front staff deals with phone calls, and the biggest impact on calls is simply a smile. And a smile is very much heard, meaning if you call somebody, you can hear that they're smiling through the phone because it affects the tonality of their voice. You can also hear that they're not smiling. So imagine that patient, they're not feeling good. They finally decide to call your office. Your staff picks up. Hi, thanks for calling doctor's office. Think what that tonality conveyed to that patient. Does it really matter what words that person says if they say it like that? Thanks for calling doctor's office. We really hope that we can help you feel better. We care so much about you and your livelihood. No, the words don't matter, right? Because the tonality is conveying something that the person is going to believe more. Words matter the least. So what's important about this is these are all parts of our system. And some days we might be frustrated, like, man, we saw all these patients, but not a lot of them moved forward with treatment. They decided to go somewhere else, or they decided to do something different. Or we got a lot of phone calls, but not a lot of patients booked appointments. Or we don't get that many positive reviews, but we do really good medical care. The thing is all of those outcomes, they are perfect outcomes of your current system. And one thing that might be impacting it is how you're treating communication with patients. So the easiest thing to think about is the brain is always looking for threats. In patients who are not feeling good, are under stress, they are looking for threats even more. So from a visual aspect, smile, raised eyebrows, gesture with your hands while you talk. Look at the patient. And if you have to deal with the EMR, talk to the patient and then turn to the computer. Or have other people help so that you can really focus on that patient's face. Your front desk staff, other people who interact with patients, let them know, hey, make sure you're focused on the patient. Smile. raised eyebrows. Don't be scowling, right? So if you're dealing with other deep, frustrating work, be able to understand, have the awareness that you have to make that shift when you go to talk to a patient. When it comes to speaking to somebody, big smile. When you talk with a smile, it helps the sound of your voice convey trust and likability to the person. And then if you do those things, your words will actually connect. And this has a major impact on your business and, your personal life too. So if you ever need help with any of these tools or want to take a look at the systems in your practice, please feel free to reach out to the Physician Growth Accelerator team. You can also go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and take the practice assessment, check your vitals. It's like a symptom quiz that maybe you would give a patient, and it helps you identify where there might be constraints within your practice. And typically I hear that people fall into a couple different buckets. One bucket is, I like these tips, and we can self-implement. We are very motivated and disciplined, and we take these things, we put them into business, and we're recognizing the outcome. Sometimes I hear that people are thinking, I like these things, but it's just interesting to me. I'm not going to implement any of this stuff. And then the third group is, I do like these things, I want to implement them, and I don't really know how to do it in a way where it's sustaining and then I keep the business growing. If you fall into that group, that is the most likely group to benefit from working with the Physician Growth Accelerator, because we are a do-it-with-you organization. It's not just set you free and hope you do it right. It's work with you to get these things done, and it's very rewarding. So physiciangrowthaccelerator.com, and we'll see you next time on the Physician Growth Accelerator.